When I experience an obstacle or challenge, I'm going to move past it. I'm going to shatter that glass ceiling and I'm going to keep going.
It hurts to smash a glass ceiling.
Wow, we literally have to be superheroes to walk through this life.
While I might have been the first, I pray that I'm not the last.
Welcome, everyone. Here we are. Here I am. And you'll notice my blue headphones. I think one of my boys was fiddling with my sound equipment, and so I had to steal one of their pairs of headphones. So we're working. It's okay. I like the blue. Welcome to Taking Her Lead, where we promote the stories of women of influence from across the globe and seek to inspire women, inspire men to engage in the conversation and the community around elevating women, promoting women, and the world needs women to step into leadership and positions of influence. And we're a little piece in that story and the movement, and we're just so excited to be here. Gina Contellato, my beloved co-host, is taking some time away for the next couple of weeks. So the next 2 episodes, she won't be here, and it's great. She's needed the time and happy to do this. And a little bit about the podcast. We've been doing this for coming up on 2 years. That's almost 2 years. Ridiculous, amazing. And we have had an incredible list of guests and dialogue and stories, vulnerability, triumphs and challenges. And I'm in awe. I'm humbled by the women who have just blessed us with their time and attention and the dialogue. So for the first year and a half, we were audio only on the podcast. Please check out those episodes and listen to them all. I think there's 45, and we're getting up there. Initially, we did them every other week. So that's why there's 45 spread over a year and a half. And then we started our live stream video shows about 4 months ago, I think. And Nick, our producer, can clarify that. He might shoot it up on the screen here. But anyway, and we've had quite a few guests on the live stream video. Today is the inaugural live LinkedIn Live. So we are really excited about that because it's yet another step in getting the word out. We have reached, I think, just a couple countries, over 70 countries in the world. So really excited about that, and darn near every single state in the union here in the U.S. So today we have an incredible person, Geraldine Abigail Itana, who works for the UN in Namibia. And she has extensive experience in gender issues, in providing healthcare access and resources to the underserved. And she works for the UNDP, so Development Program, in a lot of activities throughout the country and leadership. And she's also in one of the accelerator labs for Namibia within the UN, looking at processes within the UN, how to improve engagement and maximize the impact within a massive, amazing, yet massive organization with a lot of parts that are moving. So upcoming, we have Niraja Ganesh from Bangalore. That will be next Monday. And I'll keep a secret for what she's all about, but we will be posting that episode here in a couple of days, and you can look her up on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let us bring on Geraldine, and here we go. Hello.
Hey, Joshua.
How are you?
What's happening? I'm good, thanks. I'm good. I can't complain. I'm happy to see you.
Oh, likewise. Yes. And before we dive into your story, you have some people there. Joshua, your little one, is in another room, I think, playing.
Yes.
And we hope that he'll come in and say hi. And your husband, James, is, I think, in the same room, isn't he? So he's poised and ready to pop in. And he does work in gender equity issues. So this is very apropos to what our discussion here. How was your day? Since it's 6:30 where you are?
Yeah, 6:30 in the evening.
Yeah.
So far, it's been an awesome day. I've had the last half of my day was in a senior management meeting for UNDP, which we have every Monday afternoon, where it's a lot of checking in, reflecting. Are we on track with what we have planned to deliver over the past couple of months? Where is a new emerging challenge that we may not be aware of? Exploring what our communication for the rest of the month and week looks like. So it's been a management meeting kind of day. And then earlier in the morning, I had a little bit of a check-in with my Accelerator Lab team, which was also awesome. So most of today for me was really around meeting, checking in, following up, reviewing, scheduling, planning what's lying ahead for the rest of the week, and then figuring everything out from there.
Very strategic. Yeah. And you guys had a bit of a dust and windstorm over the weekend, right?
Yeah. So I mean, Namibian people wouldn't regard it as a windstorm because it's the norm in August, because in August the wind just decides, hey, I still am around, and it comes up and just dust everywhere. But I guess for people who are not from around here, it would be really awkward because suddenly the seasons change so dramatically.
Boom.
As does the landscape of the country when you travel through it. So you literally go from the dunes to the beach, back into a forest kind of area, and so it's what we are used to as Namibians, but I don't think everybody else would necessarily resonate with that feeling. But it's kind of awkward when the wind blows around like that. Yeah.
In my town, we have incredible windstorms, knocks over all the trees, and so I'm a little familiar with that, but not the dust, not the sand. We don't have any of that. So that's real different. I would be, I'd be like, oh, wow. So would you talk just a little about the work that you're doing currently, the initiatives and goals that you have, both with your general development program and then with your accelerator lab? To give us some context.
Wow, that's a big question. I think I'll need a year to finish all of that, but okay, I'll try. Sure. Well, UNDP in Namibia is doing so much work in terms of just trying to figure out what is it that we need to do to fast track achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, or what we like to refer to as the SDGs. Yeah. At the moment, one of the big things that I'm trying to work on is figuring out what does a public service innovation policy hold for public servants, because we'd like people within the public sector in our country to use their innovation and, just try to think outside of the box, because we realize that sometimes our structures and bureaucracies can hold us back from actually delivering a very important service to our community. So one of our big initiatives at the moment is to work with our Ministry of Home Affairs, Immigration, Safety and Security, where my team and I are really looking at a lot of work around how do we bring in innovation, all the way from how people apply and access identification documents, the registration of births and deaths in the country, because for the longest time, a lot of that work has been very manual. Somebody writes it in a book. So we're trying to move into dividing the digital, or building the bridge for the digital divide. And last week I had a really cool experience, because one of the initiatives we're taking on is supporting the Ministry of Home Affairs and Immigration, Safety and Security. We actually found a state-of-the-art drone that has all these really super cool features.
Drone?
Yeah.
What is it? What will it do? What will the drone do?
So, the drone is bigger right now. It's bigger than my dining room table, but the drone is meant to be used by the Namibian police force in anti-poaching initiatives, because, as you know, poaching, especially of our rhino and elephant, is a really big issue in the country. And I think it was just about 2 months ago, we had a very bad poaching incident in the country as well.
Yeah.
So the drone is to be used for things around looking at, anti-poaching initiatives. How can we support that? How do we enhance surveillance around anti-poaching initiatives? But then
That's
also
cool.
we're looking at one of the challenges that the ministry highlighted was that we're struggling to get people to collect their identification documents, which they need to open a bank account, to travel, et cetera, et cetera. And because of the lockdown in the country, we're trying to figure out, can we use this drone to actually deliver the identification documents to the people who applied for it? So the initiative is broad. And then the last, and I think not the last, maybe the bigger for me at least would be, we really want to use the drone to start doing safety and security surveillance of the city, where we can identify crime hotspots, because a significant amount of our GDP is brought in by tourism. And often tourism or tourists rather, are the communities or the people who are largely affected by crime, and we want to figure out some of those hotspots. How can we get the drone to do some surveillance around that? And some of the other activities that we're looking at is sort of doing mapping of a specific area. How can we map out how big a informal settlement, for example, is, and over time use that data to establish how fast is that informal settlement growing? Because the faster it grows, the more the need. The more the need for protection of women and children, the more the need for access to water, the more the need for access to sanitation services. So we're hoping that this drone can help us pick up that kind of big data. It's going to be plugged back into a computer at the ministry, and then we can use that data to start informing local authority policies and, stuff like that.
That is broad.
That's very broad. It's also starting to get really dark in here. Do you think I could take 1 second and just switch on the light?
Please, go for it. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. That's great.
Here we go. I think that might be much better, because it's starting to get dark now, and I forgot to switch the lights on. Anyway, so Joshua, that's I guess a day in my life is trying to get stuff like that off the ground, but also trying to figure out how we can do things so different, right? Like, let's just break everything. The rules, yes, the rules are made to be there for a reason, but if we can break the rules in order to get people to access services better, that is sort of what we're trying to do in UNDP in Namibia at the moment. And we're doing it in a multitude of ways. Yeah.
And then, so somewhat conversely, in the opposite direction, the Accelerator Lab looks at improving processes within the UN. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. So we're trying where we have the opportunity and we realize that a process could be really very tedious, to come up with some, we explore and figure out some ways of how we can make it better. And whether that is looking at, just engaging your staff in the office, and how this last couple of months has been really hard, because all of us have been forced to go home and work from home. So trying to figure out, how do you keep the team morale going? Because before, we would be in the office, there's noise, things going on, everybody telling you, you're making a lot of noise, there's a meeting in the office next door. Now, all of that and the interaction is gone. So we're trying to figure it out. We're working with, the team in the country office is relatively small, because we're also a small country, so we don't have a lot of people working in UNDP in Namibia. We're only 23, 24 staff. That's including management, all the interns, everybody else. And you've got country offices where they have, for example, up to 90, over 100 staff sitting in an office, and providing support to a country.
What is the population of Namibia?
Well, we're estimated to be about 2.5 million people in the country, give or take.
Yeah.
we'll probably have the latest census results only come in late next year, because we were due for censuses this year, but it was postponed because of the pandemic. So we have to figure out a different way of counting everybody that's here.
Yeah. Let's thank you for the context. That's fascinating work. Thank you for your work. It is just so critical. And I'm a bit of a systems thinker, and so that's just fascinating to me. Looking at the overall impact, and how it can move down to the person, and impact that person's life. Talk about very young Geraldine. How did you start out? What were the experiences you had as a young child that helped shape your trajectory?
Whoa. Do I get 10 out of 10 even if I don't answer?
So you can skip it. You can always skip any question.
Well, I mean, that's 10. Let's talk about 10-year-old Geraldine, or that. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I guess I can say which 80s, but it's like the early 80s. And also experienced, no, maybe not even experienced. It was more I lived through the experience of apartheid. And if you know what apartheid is, it was that segregation, and it was a big deal for South Africa. But I think many people don't realize that a country like Namibia was at some point regarded as one of the colonies of South Africa, and we were under the apartheid regime. So in comes Geraldine, born to an interracial mother and father, and causes a lot of havoc. And from the onset of being a little girl, I always tried to challenge everything and question everything, but why can't you do this? And I guess that's what has brought me to where I am at the moment. I grew up with my grandmother because of the situation in the country and the apartheid era, and also just all these structures and societal constructs that were developed back in the day. It was hard for my mom to take care of me. She was a single woman. She was just busy finishing her nursing qualification. So she's being moved all around the country. But my parents knew very early on, you need some kind of stability. So grandma and grandpa is where you're going. That's where I was raised. And I didn't really have much of a relationship with my biological father for a number of reasons. Some that he may have chosen, that I may have chosen, that my parents or my grandparents may have chose for me. But there's not much we can do about those things other than get better every day, because now I know better, so I should try and do better.
Yeah.
And I mean, I grew up with 3 cousins who lived in the house, so we were all just regarded as siblings, whether you like it or not. You are brother and sister, but you're actually cousins. And I was the only girl amongst 3 boys. So sometimes you would want to be in that space of, but I'm also one of the guys. And the boys found that really very hard because they don't want to share the space with me. But it was also really, really beautiful, because that also shaped my ability to be a nurturer, and which is awesome. Now I've got 2 kids, so I get to love them. And it was just, it was immediately built in the way that we grew up and having this love. And that's why I say I never experienced the apartheid era. I lived through it because as a child at that time, I think my parents, my mom and my dad and my grandparents had the worst experiences of the apartheid era. I was born into that space where, it wasn't such a big deal, but I knew it was hard living. There are certain places that you can go to. There are certain places that you can't go to. People are awkward when you walk into a room and here you are, and this black man is your dad. And they're like, but why? It's against the rules. So growing up, I guess what shaped a lot of who I am was just that, we were taught from my uneducated grandmother and grandfather so many values around caring, giving back to the community. And as a young child, we grew up knowing what it meant to live through poverty. My grandmother always made fun of the of saying to us, you have to just drink your water and read the recipe in the local magazine, and then you won't be so hungry when you go to bed tonight. So from a very young age, I've known that there are going to be days where it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult. Yeah. But my support system was so amazing, because learning these values and knowing that I never want my children to go through many of the bad experiences I had, I worked very hard to get to where I am today. I mean, it took me also, we call it side hustling. I side hustled my way through university. Because I needed to have a full-time job in order to make it through university to pay for school. But got that done and dusted, and here we are today. So that's a little bit about just childhood Geraldine, I guess. Contact. A little bit gangster on some ends, but we had to make it roll because the streets are real.
I have a very good friend who grew up in Yonkers, New York, in the projects. So I have some context, I have some understanding, but that wasn't me. And so I'm just constantly trying to learn. So thank you. That is really helpful, and that provides context for who you are. What were we always ask this, I think it's one of my favorite questions. What were some pivotal moments for you as a young adult? I mean, in your 20s, where you're just getting your degree, your professors, your first employment, what some moments, some events that really set your course?
Well, I mean, I think there are, like, when I was we call it primary school kid, we had to have this exercise at school where the teacher wanted you to tell the world, what are you going to do when you grow up? Who are you going to be? And so I came on, it's my turn to have my oral exam, and I said I want to be a lawyer because I want to change the world. Because growing up, we realized that if you were a lawyer, that was the solution to figuring out everybody's problems, because everybody just had a problem. We just have to help figure out how to get out of that problem. So that was, and it's something that still sticks with me, that people would laugh, because afterwards everybody in the class just were hysterically laughing, because you want to become a lawyer, you'll just tell lies to the world, which is kind of like that bad vibe going for lawyers. But no disrespect to anybody that is a lawyer. I actually really now completely understand why I wanted to be one.
You wanted to be an advocate.
Because you got to make the rules about how people can and can't do certain things. And I guess that was, for me, why I wanted to become a lawyer at a young age. But getting into university, a pivotal moment for me as a young adult was coming to terms with the fact that people actually do believe in you. I had such awesome lecturers at university who today I still have the opportunity to have conversations with, engage, and even bring them into doing, stints of work with us at the UN. I have a awesome professor that was my professor in my graduation year, Dr. Lucy Edwards-Yao, who was part of the reason why I realized that it's so important to have this conversation about gender. And she was just really, she believed in us. She believed in me. And those years of my life is when I was shaped to understand and know that, there is actually someone that believes that what you want to do, and what I wanted to do at the time was to make the world a better place, because there was so much poverty and violence and all these, negative things happening on the side. So what can I do to make that better? And what can I do that to change it? Because growing up, I had friends who were raped by, an uncle or some friend at the club, or had their drink spiked, or, young women who were in physically abusive relationships. And I always said, I never, ever want to experience that. The unfortunate thing, I guess, is that, gender-based violence is real. It's something that I have a lived experience with as well. And knowing that I had these lecturers like Dr. Edwards-Yao was such an important thing for me, because she really made me realize, I mean, of course, with all the ideologies and learnings as a sociologist, that there is more to the world and that you need to have a sense of compassion for what it is that you're busy doing. And so that was really a turning point for me. And when I was in my final year of university, one of the goals I had set myself is that one day, just one day, that glass house in the UN building, down in Klein Street, we call it Klein Street in Windhoek. I really want to work for that, even if I'm just going to be a driver. But of course, it was the journey getting there. It's only my fourth year in the UN now. So before that, I had to still do the sort of side hustle. Because I had a job that got me through university, but I also had a job as a volunteer for the Red Cross Society, in fact, because I realized to get into development, I would need to volunteer my time. But in order for me to pay my taxi fare to get to the university, I still had to do that 8 to 5 job in the meantime.
Yeah, the day job.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I wonder how you got through some of those things, because I mean, well, inspired by your professors and buoyed and affirmed is huge. I've experienced that to a certain degree. But I know you faced some pretty huge challenges as a woman, specifically because you're a woman. And I'd like, to the degree that you feel comfortable sharing anything along those lines, I'd like to hear about that. And then I would love to pull in James, your husband, because I know that he is heavily involved in women's initiatives and gender equity and women violence against women. Mm-hmm. So to start, some of your experiences, if you're willing to share.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of those, because I think as a woman, I recall when I completed my high school, I was selected to go to study in South Africa, because usually in Namibia, kids apply to the universities in South Africa. They get to go and do their qualifications out in South Africa, whether it's Stellenbosch, Cape Town, Johannesburg. But in my case, because my parents didn't necessarily have the financial means to send me to university far away, I had to make the decision to stay home. Mm-hmm. And in staying home, often the conversation would be, you're staying home because you're not good enough. And there was always this narrative built around kids who stayed back, who did not get the opportunity to go to South Africa, right? And staying home is where I had quite a number of just from the really bad experiences of, seeing women being completely beaten to a pulp, to, having to go through these sessions where you realize one of your really very close classmates has just her throat was slit by her boyfriend. For me, violence had been one of those things where I had made bad decisions and bad choices. And one of them was in choosing my boyfriend at the time. And some of these boyfriends were either not healed or they were broken and in their own way. But so was I. So for me, it was sort of the norm. So I was in a relationship where I experienced physical abuse, and that was really, very hard for me. Yeah. But I also overcame that physical abuse because of the support system that I have. And that support system it literally goes back to the family that I have been blessed to have. But I think more importantly, my female friends who I associate myself with, and there's quite a number of them, but knowing that these women are also, I mean, at the time we were girls, yes, we got into getting jiggy with things that we shouldn't be getting jiggy with, but understanding that we want to be progressive in our lives and understanding that we want to be progressive in our careers. And I've got 5 of these women that I adore them, and they're literally pillars to my life. And that is so important, because part of those were, the things that helped me get through the bad breakup with a boyfriend where it was violent, or the bad breakup. Sometimes it was physically violent. Most of the time it was the emotional sort of, clapback. You're not emotionally, you're just ruined because you're not good enough. Guys telling you, I'll find somebody better, those kind of experiences. So it's been hard, and staying back from the experience of going onto an international space was even harder, because then suddenly everybody got to know about the things that you went through. And that's immediately when your society or people in the community would make judgments about who and what you are, not knowing that this is actually a woman that has some kind of vision and she wants to go somewhere, even if my vision is blurred. But I'd always known that I want to make life better for so many people that I do know. And that's why I got into the work that I'm in, but also having to understand now more than anything with my work as part of the UNDP team, how everything is so interconnected and affected by the choices, decisions, rules, regulations that we as people in a community impose on someone else. So I think for the bad was, I've seen the bad, and it's all the way through to death and losing really good friends, or even experiences where really good friends are so traumatized by their own personal experiences that they decide to take their own lives. And those are some of the things that were always hard for me, like people not realizing how heavy depression can actually be. And depression is not necessarily something that you're born with. It's a million little things over a period of time that just make you implode as an individual. And of course, I can't speak to that because I've never had that level of depression where I wanted to take my own life. So taking that into consideration as well.
Wow. Did you, when you were in that particular abusive relationship, from the beginning, when there was violent behavior, did you know this is absolutely wrong? I don't deserve this. I'm out? Or was there a learning process where in the beginning, perhaps you felt, well, I deserve this, or maybe this is just normal? Was there a continuum and a learning process, or were you just right out the gates, this is going to change, this has to change?
Well, for me, it was definitely a learning process. But I think the very first instance of experiencing that, when it was a very emotional form of abuse, it was where I was, kind of like taken aback, because I didn't think that this was something that was going to happen to me. Because I had always said, one day when I have a boyfriend, my boyfriend will be ABCD. My husband, my partner will be. I had already created the expectation of who I want this person to be. And then it took multiple occasions for me to start realizing and going exactly what you're saying through that journey of learning. I think one of my pivotal moments was when a very emotionally abusive gentleman I had been involved with, he made a comment around, I had asked, let's go and travel the world together. Like, let's get out of this place. Let's go and see what the world has to offer. And his response to me immediately, that's so stupid. Why can't we just watch the Discovery Channel? And I was like, what?
It's denigrating.
But that's right. So because for me, that's not the experience I want. The experience I want is to be able to go into a country and actually live among people and understand what it is that they're going through. Because I had also started learning that the world is much bigger than just the borders of Namibia. And so I think those are some of the things that I needed to consider in my journey. And then eventually just realizing, you know what, this is actually not something that's going to work for me. And having to make often a very difficult decision on, are you going to stay in the relationship for the sake of keeping everybody happy because he's such a great guy? Or are you going to move on with the rest of your life because you have the rest of your life to grow and develop as an individual? And I think that was always a difficult choice to make, choosing myself over the comfort that everybody else feels in that space at the moment, but he would never, he's not that type of guy. And I needed to learn very quickly in that journey that I should not be able to tolerate that, and I deserve much more.
And as a slight segue, you have much more now.
Yes, I do.
You have an amazing man. Can we meet him? Can we meet James?
Yes, he's the
ready?
cream of the crop. Yeah, he's ready. He's gonna come sit right next to me.
Excellent.
Let's
see if you can squeeze him in. Yeah, however it works best.
There
we go.
Hey, Joshua.
James, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Good. How you doing?
Good. How's your day?
It's been a busy day. Blue Monday, as they like to call it. Yeah, but we've made it.
That's fabulous. James, can you talk a little bit about, just dive right in, just about some of the work that you do, some of the initiatives that you're involved in Namibia?
Well, right. I consider myself to be an activist. I'm a social justice gender activist. Mm-hmm. I'm currently the director of an organization called Regain Trust, which is an organization. The organization was established in 2015 with the core mandate of providing psychosocial support services to victims and survivors of gender-based violence. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, we implement a number of activities aimed at raising awareness, activities aimed at trying to sort of prevent and mitigate, the sort of high incidences of gender-based violence, as well as addressing some of the sexual reproductive health rights challenges that we experience in the country, such as teen pregnancy, early childhood marriages, and so forth.
That's what you and I need to hang out. That's just, I love it. That's absolutely fabulous. What are some of the challenges that you face in that work?
Sure, we have many challenges. I think, in Namibia, one of the biggest issues that we have is the fact that we're such a small country. Geraldine spoke about the population of where we are about 2.5 million people. Yeah. Yet the levels of inequality across various spheres is just tremendous. We're talking about the gendered inequalities. We're talking about we in as much as we've had about a colonial past, an apartheid past, we're still dealing and grappling with issues around racism and apartheid. We have massive, exactly. We have massive unemployment rates, especially amongst our young people in the country. So, all of that whole conglomeration of issues, I think, is really what is behind or what is fueling the current sort of high incidences of gender-based violence that we have in the country. We have extremely high incidences. If you compare to our population, on an annual basis, we have about 1,000 cases of rape in Namibia. So issues of sexual and gender-based violence are definitely a massive challenge for us. And in as much as we are this small country, we are still grappling with how to ensure that we are allocating sufficient and enough resources, be it from our government, be it from the private sector or from our development partners, to really strengthen the implementation of effective strategies to be able to address this. Yeah. So as we gain trust, we're sort of trying to play our small part towards a national effort to really try and end the levels of inequalities in Namibia.
How long have you been doing that work?
Sure, I've been doing this work ever since.
20 plus years.
Yeah, probably 20 plus years. 20. Ever since I got out of university, I pretty much, went into the development sector. That's something I've always been passionate about. I think having been raised by a phenomenal woman who was really a very strong matriarch in our family, and having instilled values of equality. So my childhood was my childhood memories were around how there was no gender division of labor in our households. I had to do the dishes, I did the laundry. And so from a very young age, I was basically, socialized to not sort of live to society's expectation of what a man should be. And from there, I've always had, and also a very strong sense of, justice that, we don't be a passive person that just sits by, but play your part in trying to shape your society. And I think, also a big part for me was the fact that, I grew up in a single-parented household by my mother, didn't really have, the presence of my father. So as a child, having sort of that yearning and realizing the role that a man can play in sort of parenting and seeing these things in our society, seeing how many children are being raised, without the presence of their fathers, or if the fathers are present, they tend to be abusive. So I really wanted to play my part in terms of trying to make a difference.
Do you think, so one of our guests mentioned that she'd done a lot of research in her PhD program focused on oppressed groups. And one thing that she found through study, informal, formal study, ex post facto, was that people in oppressed groups had a higher level of violence against each other because of the lack of influence and power. Do you see that at play?
I definitely think so, and one can definitely see that, especially if you look at our data and our statistics, that oftentimes the majority of those that tend to be our victims and our survivors are those that seem to be oppressed. So we're looking at women, and right now we're realizing that more and more that there's an increased risk and vulnerability for adolescent girls and young women. Which is, very concerning for us. So there's definitely, I can definitely agree with that research, or that, sort of findings. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, we're all done. No, two questions, James. First of all, can you come coach me personally? And can we clone you? Can we clone you and stick you in the US?
I always say that the work that we do, it's really it's a journey.
Yeah.
I've been an activist for so long, yet I'm still learning so much.
Yeah.
And when we do our work with men out here in Namibia, the conversation is not about trying to present this perfect facade of who I am, but basically to present, I'm James. I have so many issues that I'm grappling and trying to deal with. Yet I'm enabling a space and creating a space, and I'm fortunate enough to have, a support structure around myself, especially with my wife, who enables me to experience that level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
That I can allow myself, to be vulnerable. I don't have to live up to the stereotype of, be a strong alpha male, always have the answers, be tough, don't cry. I can explore, my challenges as a man. I've had issues with insecurities for quite a while, and I've needed to, learn that it's okay for me to seek help. It's okay for me to go and seek out a psychologist and to sit and grapple and deal with these issues. It's actually okay for me to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so the work that we're trying to do here is help men understand that, vulnerability is okay. And that it's okay for men to actually go out there and seek help. Because I often think that a lot of the times why men tend to resort to violence is because these spaces aren't created and they aren't afforded opportunities to explore their vulnerability. And that they're always needing to be strong and be invulnerable.
But I think also, and I mean, even between myself and James, it's always been every day is a learning for us. I thought that things would always be awesome while we were dating, going into being married, and now we're married, and some days I want to pull out the spatula, but I can't. So we've needed to learn to be, number one, patient with each other, and we are still navigating communication as a couple. but being very aware of, number one, the community and society that we come from that is grappled with these challenges, and that we want, as a collective, we want to start changing the narrative about a healthy family, because I don't think many Namibians actually understand or have perhaps even experienced what it means to have a healthy family.
Yeah. A healthy family is powerful and so attractive and engaging. And they're just, I'm going to say in the US, from my personal experience, from my limited experience, of course, you know, I don't know everybody. I see that operating, that the health of the family is, and not to idolize families, but still the health of the family is core in influencing a community by modeling that forbearance, by modeling that direct communication and growth that you're talking about, and which is one of the reasons why I need James to come and coach me.
I think we'll be coaching each other.
That sounds good. Let's do some subsequent Zoom calls. That'd be fabulous. Oh my goodness. Well, James, I will let you go. We want to just wrap up with Geraldine. Thank you. It's a privilege. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You're going to check on Joshua? Okay.
Yeah. He's a good-looking guy, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One kind of a segue into some personal practices. What do you do to care for yourself? What are some rhythms, resources you avail?
Wow. Okay. There are a few, but I think my favorite ones is, well, I like reading. The past couple of months have been hard for just focusing on reading because the kids and everything else happening in the house. Mm-hmm. I do love the occasional road trip, but now with the pandemic, we've been locked in, so we can't move around so much. Yeah. Then, of course, I also love just expressing, and I say this to James all the time, I express my feelings in my cooking. So if it's really spicy food, I was really very spicy today. Or angry.
I can't do spice. You can't cook for me. Just saying.
Right? And so I always have to ask twice, like, how is the food? Is it okay? But again, that's just the affirmation that I need, that what I did for my family was nurturing. For myself, of course, I think it's important to just take some time out. James and I both believe very, very strongly about seeing somebody, like a counselor or a psychologist. So we want to go and sit with someone for an hour. Some days I like to just cry all the time. I can be super emotional about stuff as well and just bawl it out the whole day. And after a while, I'll feel better. But
so
I think
healthy. So that's so strong. That's so healthy.
Yeah, but also sometimes very hard, because I think getting yourself to a point of realizing that somewhere in my last couple of days, something shifted and I was uncomfortable or insecure or afraid, like having to come out and actually say that this is something I was worried or concerned about, and that is playing in my subconscious to get my insecurities all over the show, is often a very hard thing to do. I mean, just on, I think it was Thursday afternoon, we had a session with a counselor for the office, and it's a group session, and I don't know, but I had a couple of triggers during the course of the week, and I started eyeballing it and crying like nobody's business in the call. And I don't think anybody really had expected that. But generally, I have always been a very positive, energetic, out there moving person. So I guess right now, with us being in the middle of this pandemic and being locked in, I try to exert that energy that I in social networks otherwise couldn't have had through taking a walk with the kids. Those small, simple things, being busy in some or the other way. Just he's on his way. Okay, no, he took a U-turn. The little one was just running towards Joshua. Me. Yeah. And I mean, with raising two boys, and our children are amazing. I really appreciate just their personas, as different as they are. but 2 boys have a lot of energy, and sometimes that I struggle
Loud.
with. They're loud, they're fast, they're dirty. Sometimes before I can stop them, they've already made the decision that 20 minutes from now may or may not cause any tears. So those are some of the things that I try to keep myself busy with. And then, of course, I get to spend...
I have 3 boys, by the way. I have 3.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here he is. Yay!
You see, he came in like a plane.
Joshua.
Please, Joshua.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go. Cool. Yeah, so for me, those are some of the things I get to do. But I mean, we also my friends are awesome. We've got great WhatsApp chat groups every now and then, sometimes emotional, sometimes just downright silly, because you need that silly in your life.
Yes.
Other days it could be really serious stuff that we talk about. But I guess I'm very, very privileged to have really great friends who are also learning and growing with me as a woman.
That's amazing. That's from having the female friends who supported you in your dignity and your feminism and needing, not accommodating violence, to now. That sounds amazing, to have that level of friendship and depth. That sounds amazing. What are you most hopeful for? This is our final question, but then I want to give you an opportunity to say whatever you want to say. What are you most hopeful for with regard to women in the world, in Namibia, moving forward?
Okay, so I think what I'm most hopeful for is, because we've got such high numbers of teenage pregnancies, that those young teenage mothers won't lose hope, because I think there is a lot of loss of, I have failed the system, I have failed my family, I failed myself in becoming pregnant as a teenager. But what I'm most hopeful for is that these young women that we strive to work with in these communities don't lose hope, because yes, you made choices that led to where you are today, but all of this is part of your journey that should be building your character. And I think if there's one thing I'm hopeful for, is that these young women that are, even the ones that find themselves in those inadequate, I want to call it inadequate, but abusive relationships, you might not find your way out right now, but eventually your journey will lead you to be a greater person than what you are and what you're experiencing. So I'm really hopeful about that. And I think coupled with that, I'm also hopeful about just women's representation in spaces where we make decisions about our bodies, about our children, about our families and our relationships. I'm also hopeful that our representation will be adequate enough to allow women a space to be who they want and should be.
Make decisions and have impact in policy and law and provision of services. Yeah. Anything you would like to share with our viewers and our listeners? Anything?
Geez, people are free to connect with me through LinkedIn, since this is our inaugural LinkedIn Live. Connect with me. Let's have a conversation about something that you'd like to have a conversation about. Drop me a line or two. But I think what I want to share maybe with everyone around, just my experiences, where I've come from, and the world that I would like to see, is for the young girls and women who are out there listening, to know that you're never alone in this journey, and you never have to make decisions based on, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Okay, so you never have to make decisions based on, feeling inadequate or insecure, but rather that someone out there is willing to listen. We've got quite a number of programs and interventions and initiatives running in UNDP in Namibia. So if people want to reach out and have a conversation about how they can get involved in some of those, they're welcome to do that.
Yes.
We're always looking for new experiences and new learnings and how we can try and build that back into our larger society. And I think that's really what I want to share. And of course, I think more importantly for men to not feel that this gender equality, women's empowerment is a thing to push men aside, because that's exactly what it's not. And for men to be able to come out and have these conversations. And if they want to, they can come and hang out with my husband. I'm sure he'll offer them a beer or a Kool-Aid, whatever they're going to drink. And have those conversations, because it's time that as men and women, we start having the conversations, because essentially we need to start changing the narrative for our experiences that our children face.
I love it. Because I think and just to resonate and respond, I had a couple of our guests have mentioned that, first of all, if things are going to change, men have to be part of the dialogue.
Absolutely, yes.
Men have to grow in awareness, and empathy, and lament, and progress, and that the women who are abused by men, the men have been abused. They are broken. They are broken. It's not okay what they're doing. Right. That's not an excuse.
They need to go through their own journey of healing to realize why what I'm doing is wrong. And I think sometimes we also create the space where we just, the men are the problem, but we also very often you'll hear the question, but who raised those men? So we also need to have those conversations, because those men were raised by often single mothers, but they were broken in their own way. And we have to, as men and women, come together to figure out what does our journey look like in terms of healing, and how do we make that better for everyone else.
Yep. Amen. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And as you and I have mentioned, as I mentioned, we've talked just briefly about, this will be recorded and available for download, available for share on YouTube. Subsequently, sometimes as soon as a couple of hours, usually it takes about a day. And so viewers, please share that, and it will give people a chance who couldn't attend this live to view that. And then of course we will take the audio from this and do some truncation to format it to be conducive for driving and listening to it. And that will go on every platform for
Sounds
audio.
Good to me.
So yeah, Geraldine, thank you so much for taking the time. And as I hope you have a wonderful evening and get the chance to do some self-care. Please say hi to your babies and thank James for us.
I will definitely do that. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity also.
Fabulous. Bye-bye. Oh, gosh, I just think I really need to do some chatting with James. What a guy. And 20 years of experience doing that. That is phenomenal. Janine and I have talked. It was Janine's idea to bring in James when she met him. And nailed it. That was amazing. I'm grateful for the Jameses in the world who are engaging in this dialogue and who are growing in awareness and growing in healing. Next week, we have an amazing guest coming up, and we will send out the invites on LinkedIn and watch for those. I think I'll send those out just in a day because it doesn't allow you to go prior to 7 days out. So that should come out pretty quick. And please subscribe. Please follow our page on LinkedIn. You will get the alerts and notifications real quickly for that. And thanks so much for watching. I hope this was valuable. It was fascinating for me. And we appreciate your support. So you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.